This is me, covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us.
And the phone rang, and the voice on the other end said, "When was the last time you saw Susan?" And I instantly kind of felt like dread. What has happened?
28-year-old Susan Powell was last seen Sunday.
It has been 3 days.
4 days and counting.
Been missing for a week.
Josh had taken the children on a middle-of-the-night camping trip. It was freezing cold. None of this makes any sense.
He was like, yeah, the kids are here. No, Susan's not with me. And I was like, well, where is she? You know, and he was like, I don't know.
Who were you camping with?
My dad and my mom.
The children said, Mommy was in the van but didn't come back with us. Pretty significant thing for a 4-year-old to tell a detective.
Susan had often referred to her father-in-law as creepy.
We're too close.
There was Stephen wanting to be interviewed, and he ends up revealing the biggest bombshell.
We interacted in a lot of sexual ways because I enjoy doing that.
She even goes as far as to say, if I die, it may not be an accident.
Okay, go and ask one last question.
How am I going to find your wife without your help?
It is in Puyallup, Washington, where these two families and these two lives intersect. Josh Powell and Susan Cox.
Susan was one of 4 daughters born to Chuck and Judy Cox. She was just, a really typical girl and teenager. She liked to ride horses.
She's my partner in crime. Susan tried to be rebellious, but she had too good of a heart.
She was doing well in church and school, had friends, she loved choir.
She liked her hair done, her nails done, wore stylish clothes.
Susan had gone to cosmetology school. She liked to make other people feel good about themselves.
She got interested in boys as a teenager. She met Josh when she was 18 at a social event for young Mormons, and he was in his 20s, and she hadn't dated a lot.
In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, if you are unmarried, you can attend a congregation that is for other unmarried individuals. And so Josh and Susan are both kind of circulating in this singles crowd.
There are these incredible home movies taken by Josh's dad, which were later released by police, that show the couple's blossoming relationship.
You cut that out of the tape, right?
When I first met Josh, I guess I thought he was cute. He was very confident, and he thought he could get any girl he wanted.
Susan said that he was treating her really well, and he cared about her, and he promised he'd make her happy.
Josh Powell was a ambitious, strong-headed, kind of nerdy guy.
Just tall, dorky, his head's too big for his shoulders. He just looked awkward.
He's got a job, he's got his own place, and he's going to college, sounding pretty good.
He's going to go to school for business, so he's somebody who is bright when he applies himself.
They quickly fell in love. You see pictures of them, they looked to be completely smitten.
Josh and Susan's relationship goes from not knowing each other at all in October to being engaged by the end of December.
When she told me she was getting married, I wasn't that supportive because she barely knew him. And she just assured me that she's going to be really happy and that he wanted in life what she wanted in life.
Those videos also capture Josh and Susan's wedding and the home life they built together after.
Susan looked very pretty at her wedding. Very traditional, long white dress.
So you put the ring in that box and opened it up, put it on.
She was very excited to show off Josh and start their lives together.
Let's see the ring. Let's see that ring. Hold your hand up, please.
It's a young person's love story that quickly becomes dark.
As the reception went on, Josh was ignoring her more and more, taking pictures and hanging out with his family, and then disappearing. I could tell she was getting more agitated.
Susan and Josh didn't have much money, and they found themselves in doing some odd jobs just to get by.
Susan actually was the financial provider. He kept going in and out of jobs and was never really settled with anything.
They moved to West Valley City in Utah because they were looking for a better life. They wanted to improve their economic situation. They buy a house and they start to have a family.
I still remember the day that she told me she was pregnant. It was probably the most impactful day of her life. She was so excited because she always wanted to be a mom.
I would describe Josh as an unattached dad.
Josh wanted to hold Charlie when he wanted to show him off to people. But other than that, he didn't want to change his diaper or feed him or give him a bath.
Hey, buddy. Go up here. Here we go. Okay.
And then they had Braden. And if you look at the family pictures, there is joy and there is sparkle.
Yeah.
As little boys, they were rambunctious and mischievous and ran around being typical happy little boys.
What are you watching? Cars.
And Susan loved them more than anything in the world.
Monday morning, December 7th, 2009. They didn't show up.
Debbie Caldwell. She is the daycare provider for Charlie and Braden Powell.
And by 7 o'clock, still no Susan. She had to be to work at 7. So that's not like Susan to be late and not call.
They don't show up that Monday morning as the snowstorm is coming in, and Debbie Caldwell becomes concerned.
Debbie tried to call Susan on the phone, tried to call Josh, couldn't reach anybody.
So I got in the van and I went up the street to her house. And as I pulled into her circle, there was no tire tracks in the driveway. So I pounded on the door and I got no answer.
So Debbie calls the emergency contact, which is Josh's sister Jennifer Graves and Josh's mom, Terry Powell.
The conclusion that we came to was carbon monoxide. They're probably dead in their beds. We ended up calling the police.
911, what is your emergency?
My son and his wife and their 2 children are not responding to calls, or they're not responding to people pounding on their door, and there's no tracks coming out of their driveway. I was worried that maybe gas has been left on or something like that.
And a couple of officers come out on a welfare check. They determined that the best course of action is to break a window to see whether or not the family is in there.
And they said, we'll go in if you'll pay for the window. And so we said, yeah, absolutely.
They find evidence that pointed to some unusual circumstances.
Why would that be here? That just wasn't a normal thing.
Good Monday morning, Utah. It is December 7th.
Snow and ice.
Lick Street. 2 to 4 feet of snow in this.
December 7th, 2009. I was viewing a bank robbery case, and the sergeant asked me to reach out to patrol. They were out on a missing family out on the west side of town.
Jennifer gave permission to the police to break a window and go into the house.
Most officers just kind of shimmied in. He was like, wait, what is up with the fans? There are 2 box fans pointed at the carpet in the living room, and we were all confused.
The officers cleared the entire residence and found nobody inside the home. And the POW vehicle, which was a blue minivan, it wasn't parked in the garage.
The first thing I saw was Susan's purse was on a table, and I started pulling out things. You know, I found her keys, her wallet, and had her driver's license and her credit card.
You would expect that if she had left on her own, was intending to go someplace, she would have taken those items.
The kitchen, the master bedroom was fairly clean. I mean, the bed wasn't made. The bedroom for the children, the blankets were missing. But yeah, the house was pretty orderly. There was no sign of a disturbance, physical altercation inside of the residence.
Is it 16?
On the morning of December 7th, I was sitting in my family room, homeschooling my 3 kids, and the phone rang. The voice on the other end said, "Josh, Susan, and the boys are missing, and nobody's seen them since yesterday." It's just the most horrible, sickening feeling. I just thought, what has happened?
Susan's friends were afraid that they'd gone out on a jaunt because Josh liked to drive and take photographs, and maybe had slipped off a cliff or they'd gotten stuck in the snow.
I made a few phone calls asking other people in the congregation if anyone had seen Susan. Giovanna goes, "I actually had dinner with them last night."
Susan asked Giovanna to come over to the house and help her with her knitting and crocheting. While she was there, Josh, who never did anything domestic at all, offered to make people dinner.
She was crocheting on her blanket. I was working on the yarn. Josh and the boys were in the kitchen cooking.
He called his father, Steve, to ask for a recipe for pancakes. Everything he did was a little bit different routine than anybody else would have. He made them one by one. He took a plate into Giovanna. He took a plate with different pancakes made, obviously, into Susan.
He and the boys ate at the table, and he brought our plates into us in the living rooms. I think that was probably very unusual.
I never ever witnessed them ever eating in the living room.
Shortly after that, Susan began to not feel well. Susan laid down, and Josh sort of suggested to Giovanna that it was time for her to leave.
He was going to take the boys sledding, and he and the boys actually drove out before I had finished putting on my seatbelt. That was the last time I saw anybody, around 5.
My brother finally called right away, asked about the kids, asked about Susan, and he was like, "Yeah, the kids are here. No, Susan's not with me." And I was like, "Well, where is she?" You know, and he was like, "I don't know. I have no idea. Like, she went to work."
Josh drives all the way south to a place called Point of the Mountain, and he places a phone call to Susan's phone.
Hello, Susan. We are on our way back, and I can't believe that somehow my brain missed the day. I thought today was Sunday. That was really, really stupid. All right, I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye.
We sat there and waited. It was a long time. It was an hour, maybe more. Josh finally showed up at the house.
Josh had taken the children on a middle-of-the-night camping trip. It was freezing cold. None of this makes any sense, except to him, he does things spontaneously, without any plan. And he took the kids. He said that he left Susan in the house. She was sleeping.
We really wanted to talk with Josh, and we wanted to record it. We had Josh follow us to the substation. He was adamant about taking the boys with him.
When's the last time you seen her?
Probably about midnight of last night.
Where at?
We're finishing up a movie.
What movie did you just watch?
Mom.
Here you go, Mike.
Josh is very evasive, and he uses the kids who are in the room to distract away.
He wasn't forthcoming with answers or information, so it was very frustrating.
And where did you drive to?
Well, I started heading south through Tooele, turned onto the Pony Express.
How far down the Pony Express did you go?
Not very far. Maybe 20 miles, I don't know. So what did you do once you got there?
Hooked up a heater and had a fire for the boys.
Josh said they drove to Simpson Springs and had s'mores over a campfire. It's not really very clear exactly what happened that evening and the next morning.
We asked him if we could search his minivan, and he agreed. The minivan was full of camping supplies, like there was a tarp, a generator, shovel, graham crackers.
During that search of the minivan, where they find Susan's phone hidden in the center console. It's this pink cell phone, clearly not Josh's.
And he was kind of like deer in headlights. He just kind of looked at us.
In no way did it make any sense. Susan's cell phone is in the van with him. Where the heck was Susan?
Detectives talked to Josh and Susan's son, Charlie.
There was one particular statement that raised a lot of eyebrows.
Who were you camping with?
My dad and my mom and my little brother.
Dad, your mom, and your brother?
Down the street from the Powells, Kiersey Hellawell sat in a downstairs playroom, wondering, where is Susan? Then came the news. It made her heart beat faster, her stomach turn in somersaults.
I just lost it.
9 o'clock that night, Jennifer told me that Josh and the boys are home, and I'm like, well, where's Susan? And she said, we don't know.
As soon as I heard that he was back and Susan was not with them, I instantly said to myself, what has he done?
It became like this game of telephone, where people were passing along these little bits of information, and suddenly a larger story was coming together.
He said he was out driving around, he'd gone out camping with the boys. And I'm like, are you a crazy man? It was cold.
That is 100% Josh. He did that kind of stuff all the time.
But Susan would have never allowed him to ever take the boys out in the winter to the desert in the middle of the night. Never. I never believed his story at all.
It was determined we didn't have enough probable cause to secure a search warrant for the residence, let alone book Josh into jail, because we didn't have any physical evidence.
The decision was a huge mistake because he burns this metal object into oblivion. So thoroughly destroyed was this item that nobody to this day can say what exactly it was.
Bags and bags of things are shoved into the garbage. Why would you do that the day after your wife disappears?
The following morning, he is observed with the minivan pulled out of the garage, all the doors open, thoroughly cleaning it, wiping it down, vacuuming it.
It was really odd to me because he was running around the house grabbing piles of towels and putting them in the washer, and finally we're like, you've got to go to your interview with the police.
All right, no problem. Have a seat. I'm going to go grab my notebook and I'll be right back, okay?
Okay. Josh Powell kind of has a uniform of sorts. It's typically a t-shirt, it's a leather jacket, it's denim pants, and it's dingy white shoes. When Josh goes in to talk to the police, in the tape, you see him initially acting very emotional.
I don't know. I didn't even think it was that. I didn't even sink in yesterday.
He's crying. His voice is shaking. He's just trying to hold it together. But as Detective Maxwell continues to push Josh about what's going on, Josh's demeanor changes.
Okay, remember what we were doing.
Okay. So you don't remember what you guys did from 6 o'clock till you went to bed on Saturday night?
I just don't remember what activity we were doing.
Josh is not a participant at all in talking about his missing wife.
Shows no urgency in getting out to go look for her.
During the day, but...
Have you checked any places where she could be?
I haven't had much of a chance to do any of that yet.
He asks police no questions about what they're doing to find her.
What places should we go check to see if we can find her?
CD supply? I don't think she would be there, but she likes them.
And he offers no suggestions, really, about where they might look.
Okay, let me ask you this before you go. Go ahead and ask one last question. How am I going to find your wife without your help?
While I'm interviewing him, another colleague conducted a child forensic interview.
Right there. Yeah. Good job. It's got nice lights, huh? Pretty.
We went to the Children's Justice Center, and they were able to interview Charlie. Braden really wouldn't talk to them.
Okay. Well, what did you do last night?
Go camping.
You went camping? Who were you camping with?
My dad and my mom and my little brother.
The children said, Mommy was in the van but didn't come back with us. A pretty significant thing for a 4-year-old to tell a detective.
We got in the airplane, and the airplane went to Dinosaur National Park.
Oh. You went to an airplane yesterday?
Charlie's interview is perplexing because he says a lot of things that don't make much sense.
Okay, so Charlie, when you guys came home from camping, who came home with you?
My dad.
And
my mom stayed at Dinosaur National Park. My mom stayed where a prison park.
There was one particular statement that raised a lot of eyebrows. Mommy is with the crystals. And how some people interpreted that was that the boys had been with their mom and she was not alive.
Your children are telling our detectives that Mom went with you guys last night and that she didn't come back.
She did not go with us. They know that she didn't go with us.
So your kids lie then? Do your kids lie?
Sometimes they do.
With children, they're going to go from threads of truth and reality to fantasy. And maybe things that happened long before Mom disappeared, they're still in his memory, and in his mind sort of fuses together.
She was not with us. I didn't leave her at the Pony Express. I didn't just take her out and drop her off or even do anything. I do want the lawyer, because at this point, I definitely want a lawyer.
Could have I went and booked him into jail? Yeah, I could have. But we wanted to find Susan, so we were putting a GPS tracker on his van. We want him to be out and about and see where he goes.
Instead of picking up his van, he went to the airport. He rented a Ford Focus.
And he vanishes in that rental car for 18 hours. And when he returns that rental car, it has an additional 807 miles on the odometer. To this day, we don't know where Josh went.
Very quickly, the police realized that Josh was lying to them, that he was evasive, and he was not acting like a bereaved husband.
When detectives spoke with Susan's friends, there was a very different picture of this marriage.
She went to see a divorce lawyer, and he told her to make a videotape.
This is me, covering all my bases.
In a developing story, the search continues this morning
for a missing wife and mother in West Valley City.
We had been hearing some buzz in the community that there was a woman who was missing.
28-year-old Susan Powell was last seen
Sunday night, a family dinner with other friends.
It has been 3 days.
4 days and counting.
Been missing for a week.
Utah gets missing persons cases almost every day, so this didn't really stand out as anything out of the normal.
ABC4's Brian Carlson is live at the West Valley Police Station tonight.
Until you start to hear some of the details unravel.
We've learned the search warrants for the Powell's home have now been sealed off.
It's strange that he came home with the kids and not her.
West Valley City Police calling this one a puzzler.
Call it suspicious.
Not even a clue. If you see her or know anything, please contact the West Valley Police Department.
Her friends and family were just starting to ask questions. They were out there with flyers, just trying to find out where she might be.
Volunteers fanned out, handing out flyers of Susan Powell.
Josh, after Susan went missing, he went from the guy who was talking about everything and knew everything to somebody who said nothing, knew nothing.
And a husband who says he does not know what has happened to her.
We know the answers are out there, and we need those who know where she is and what happened to come forward.
I held a candlelight vigil a few days into her disappearance, and Josh came to that late.
After the candlelight vigil was over, Josh Powell did show up here in the park with his 2 children, but he quickly left without saying anything.
Charlie had come up to me and he was telling me, Debbie, my hands are cold, my hands are cold. And Josh scooped Charlie up and kind of pulled him away like this.
And reporters were trying to chase him through the snow, and he was walking away from them.
You were camping with the boys?
I have to go get my boys.
There was no point at which Josh ever seemed to even be concerned that Susan was missing. If he wanted to help on the website, he should have detailed a timeline. He never participated in any of the massive, massive efforts that myself and relatives and friends launched to put out flyers in malls and parking lots.
He didn't seem like he was engaged at all in what was going on. It seemed like his mind was somewhere else. He spoke very briefly with local media.
I've been trying to figure out what I can do so I don't sit idle. I'm dealing with this repeatedly.
People were upset that he didn't seem upset that she was missing. And so people thought that's because he's guilty.
Josh, will you give us a comment today?
Pointing the fingers at Joshua, I don't want to do that.
It seemed like initially Josh and Susan were a pretty conservative couple, loving family, couple of kids. We learned that there was a lot of distress, a lot of turmoil in their marriage.
He controlled the money, even though she was the breadwinner.
Josh is very willing to spend money building himself a fancy computer. Susan doesn't get that privilege.
There's my new printer.
Put the drawers underneath, the shelving.
It's sad to look at that family and know now what was actually going on. Susan was tormented about how troubled the marriage was.
She'd been really happy, he'd been a great husband, and she said that he really changed. He became not affectionate.
Taking a picture of the back of your head.
Awkward to talk about, but they also had issues, you know, in the bedroom. Susan was this beautiful girl, but Josh just was not interested in her sexually. It was just really weird.
He kept her at arm's length. He wouldn't kiss her anymore. He wouldn't touch her. He wouldn't hold her hand.
Josh and Susan's marriage reaches rock bottom in the summer of 2008. Josh and Susan are constantly fighting. They're arguing in front of the kids. Josh is exhibiting extreme control over Susan.
She said one time we were having a screaming fight and I shoved him, pushed me back, and he goes, if you ever do that again, I'm going to hit you. But she said he never did.
Susan's now starting to think about, I've got to get out of this marriage.
She went to see a divorce lawyer one time for a free consultation at my advice, and he told her to make a videotape of everything in your house.
This is me, July 29th, 2008, covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. And here is our safe. Got all sorts of files, financial information, speakers, 5.1 surround sound. Broke this and threw all my DVDs and made a mess. There's a hole in that wall. Beautiful diamond necklace my mom bought. Jade, that's a family heirloom. Not worth thousands of dollars, but I have assets. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
After she would email me a lot and just say it. I want to do everything in my power to save my marriage before I walk away.
Josh had warned her, if you divorce me, you'll never see the children. So she stayed.
Police ended up discovering the safety deposit box that Susan kept secretly from Josh at the bank where she worked. In it, they found a DVD, some savings bonds, and there was a makeshift will and testament.
The last will and testament, handwritten on one piece of paper, both sides, top to bottom, side to side. There was no room to write another word.
She wrote about how bad the marriage had become. She talked about $1 million life insurance policy that Josh had taken out on her. And she told her boys she would never leave them.
She even goes as far as to say, if I die, it may not be an accident.
That is our biggest piece of evidence. It's her last words. There was no doubt that this document was authored by Susan.
The biggest mystery of this case is why didn't police arrest Josh Powell?
I was frustrated because they hadn't arrested him. I felt they had plenty of evidence to arrest him.
Police have officially named Joshua Powell a person of interest in the disappearance of his wife, Susan.
The West Valley City Police Department took a lot of heat for not throwing the handcuffs on Josh.
There's a pile of circumstantial evidence. Is there enough there to arrest him and book him into jail and hold him accountable? Absolutely there is. Could we? No. The district attorney's office would not file any charges. They were very specific and told us that we needed to wait 12 months with no body.
ABC News reached out to the DA at the time, who declined to respond to this claim and refused to comment on the case.
Within days of Susan's disappearance, he had closed their bank accounts, cashed out her retirement fund, took the boys to Puyallup.
People we talked to say they can't believe that Joshua Powell has emptied the house and left what is ground zero in the disappearance of his wife. They say it only casts more doubt on a man they're having an increasingly difficult time believing.
I suddenly had this thought, I should get Josh to confess.
Jennifer volunteered with the police to wear a wire.
What is proof?
I know what I've done, and I haven't done anything.
For right now, you just endure and take each day as you can.
When Josh told police he took the boys camping in the middle of the night in Utah's West Desert, police started their search there.
Detectives are scouring rocky hillsides and abandoned mine tunnels for any signs of Susan Powell.
But police for months and months would search these mines, taking K-9 teams.
And West Valley police detectives say they plan to survey as many as possible.
The most intense part of this search is happening right at the bottom of this hill.
Investigators are swarming the high desert.
Josh told somebody that the best place to dispose of a body would be in a mine.
This is one of those abandoned mine shafts in which detectives went through.
Nobody'd ever find him.
It's like finding a needle in the haystack. A lot of questions still unanswered at this point.
There's a big part of you missing, and you want to know the truth.
But the family won't give up hope. There are still purple ribbons at their home. There are still stickers on car windows.
Josh decides that he's going to take the boys up to his dad's house in Washington to try to get away from the media circus.
You have anything to say?
Josh, will you give us a comment
You're
today?
a person of interest, Josh.
Josh's dad, Steve Powell, he takes control. He shields Josh from the media and becomes his most ardent defender.
I call it Fort Powell because it became a fortress.
They had the windows, blinds drawn. They kept the house dark inside. When the media would knock, they'd open a crack and say no. They weren't talking to anybody.
Hi, I'm trying to find Josh Powell.
They were just their own little country.
Josh isolates himself from the world. He's not talking to police. He's not talking to media. He's certainly not searching for his missing wife.
I suddenly had this thought, I should try and get Josh to confess.
Even Josh's sister, Jennifer Graves, doesn't believe him. So she goes to police and she volunteers to wear a wire and go inside her dad's house.
They were just about to have dinner, and we went in, and the boys were so excited to see us.
My birthday! It is! It's your birthday, Johnny! No.
I didn't know exactly how to force this confrontation with Josh.
I've been hearing rumors that you'll probably be arrested soon.
Well, I don't know.
Suddenly, I just shoved Josh into the bathroom. And at that point, I was like, drop all pretense. Just tell me where her body is.
We tried to cover it up. Where is Susan?
Jennifer did a phenomenal job.
I just don't believe it anymore. I can see it in your eyes. There's something there.
You're wrong. Well, like I say,
I think you just need to confess now and get it over with.
don't be ridiculous. I know what I've done, and I haven't done anything.
You told him.
I've already told him to. Every step. I'm not going to violate my attorney's direction.
He still wouldn't budge. He still would not give me anything. I was so frustrated.
Eventually, Steve kicked Jennifer out of the residence, calling her derogatory names.
You are a bitch, is what you are. You talked about your brother and my son that went.
I regret not getting the confession, but I don't regret going.
This is Good Morning America.
And joining us now, Susan's mother and father, Judy.
Susan's parents, from the moment she was missing, they were very involved with the press.
Suspect your son-in-law, your grandchildren, what they saw.
But very quickly, the tone changed.
We made a conscious decision. The politeness wasn't working, so we basically called him out. Josh is a desperate person. He has no valid explanation for where he was.
Chuck Cox and the family, they're putting the purple ribbons, they got the billboard outside the neighborhood.
All these things, I'm sure, are driving him crazy, but for 18 months he sits in isolation and doesn't talk to anybody about it.
To try to get Josh to talk, we put together the honk and wave.
What in the world is a honk and wave?
Thank you!
And he said, you make these, you're going to get these huge signs, and you stand on the really busy corners and get people to honk and wave to show their support.
Thank you!
It can cause anxiety and disruption in your suspect's mind. People start to do things as the stress tends to build.
They picked a busy street near a store that they knew Steve and Josh shopped at, and Chuck and Judy and others were out there with signs and everything. And there were television cameras there.
We're not going to stop looking for her no matter how long it takes.
They had these shirts with Susan's face. I think it said, "Have you seen me?" And they had some big posters, and they were waving and balloons and handing out flyers to cars as they went by.
Steve pulled by, and the next thing I know, he's stomping over towards me. You can't do this.
This is a store that I shop at. The only places where they've passed out flyers about Susan, the only place where they've put up billboards, the only place where they've duct taped flyers to light posts.
How is you coming here helping to find Susan?
It isn't helping to find Susan. How is your standing at our neighborhood market helping to find Susan, Chuck?
An extraordinary, personal, and very public confrontation that erupted in the middle of the search for Susan Powell. Several family members were clashing in front of the cameras.
All over the media. If somebody has seen her, then they can report to the police.
And you're only going to do this. Which other stores are you doing this at, Chuck?
It was ugly. It was weird. It was really contentious. I was waiting for the cops to come and haul one of them away.
Since you come out against my family.
Then Josh showed up midway into this confrontation on the street corner, and he had the boys in the van with him.
Chuck Cox uses my sons as pawns in the media to drive whatever message he is trying to drive.
Are you doing okay?
Yeah, that's all right.
I get a call from Josh. We were telling Josh, okay, are you going to do this interview or not? And he finally said yes. You still love her?
Yeah.
He seemed very distant when I spoke to him. He had a hollow look and a stare that I wondered, is he trying to intimidate me? Josh, did you kill your wife? Then there was Stephen wanting to be interviewed, and he ends up revealing the biggest bombshell.
There were just sexual things going on between us.
This is your daughter-in-law.
We were watching this on TV, and our jaws just dropped.
Do you see the birdie?
Where?
Don't crawl in the dirt, boys.
Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
And I was like, where is she? You know, and he was like, I don't know.
I instantly said to myself, what has he done?
You have anything to say?
Josh, will you give us a comment
You're
today?
a person of interest, Josh.
Even his own sister didn't believe him anymore.
I just shoved Josh into the bathroom. And at that point, I was like, drop all pretense. Just tell me where her body is.
Susan had often referred to her father-in-law as creepy, but she, I don't think, had any idea how creepy the man truly was.
I can love you in a secret way.
We can't talk about Susan or camping. I always keep these as secrets.
During that interview, it's very clear that Charlie has been coached.
He looked more and more like a psychopath. He was running out of places to hide.
Slams the door in her face and locks it.
This is a story you can't write in a Hollywood script. No one would have thought in a million years that's how the story would have ended.
Susan Powell was a young, beautiful mother of 2 adorable children. She just one night vanished.
Detectives have named Josh Powell a person of interest in the case.
He did some local news, some ambush-style interviews where they would ask him something on the fly. And
You were camping with the boys?
I have to go get my boys.
But he never really sat down and talked about what happened. And I'll never forget the first time that I met him. I shook his hand, and a chill just like raced up through my spine. I just shook the hand of a killer. Are we rolling? Why talk now?
Oh, man. I wanted to come out and say something. People who know me know that I'm a good dad. I was a good husband. I provided for them. Susan also contributed.
Nothing he told me during that interview convinced me that he was not part of what happened to her and why she disappeared. I know that you've told police that you were camping. You brought your 2-year-old and your 4-year-old camping. Is that where you were?
I'm not going to talk about anything that my attorney has specifically told me not to.
Okay. Why not just answer where you were when she disappeared?
Josh, can I suggest something?
His father was there, and his father really wanted to be interviewed, which was odd. And I had really no desire to interview Stephen Powell at that time, 0. And I just thought, this is such a waste of time. This is pointless. You think she ran away with another man?
It was another man.
I don't think Josh was in the room for that part of the interview. And before you know it, he ends up revealing the biggest bombshell out of all of the interviews that I've had done in out of the whole case. What makes you think that she would leave her kids, her 2 young sons, and run away with another man?
With another man. Susan was very, very sexual with me. She was very flirtatious. I mean, she was just, she did it, I did. I mean, we interacted in a lot of sexual ways because Susan enjoys doing that.
But this is...
I enjoy doing that.
Why are you telling everyone that? That's not to your benefit, but somehow in my dad's own twisted mind, he thought that that was the greatest strategy to keep the dogs off Josh or something. I don't know.
One day we were at an animal park. I was holding Braden in my arms, and I had my hands like this. The part I remember is that Susan came over to take him from me, and instead of just reaching out and grabbing him, she pressed her breasts against my hands tightly, and she wouldn't let my hands out. And that's nice. It was a cold day, so it was a nice, warm feeling.
Give me a break. But he loved to talk about it.
Josh and Susan, early in their marriage, move in to Steve Powell's home.
Susan had often referred to her father-in-law as creepy. But she, I don't think, had any idea how creepy the man truly was.
No, I'll do this.
And during this period of time, Steve Powell is constantly filming Susan. This is a man who is collecting video for his own perverse gratification. Because Steve Powell is a voyeur.
He wrote a number of songs about Susan.
Stephen Powell even recorded them and posted them on his website.
I can love you in a secret way. I can love you each and every day.
He had a pseudonym he used, Steve Chantre.
While Josh and Susan were living with my dad, there was a point where she was alone in the car with my dad for a short time while Josh was in the house, and my dad actually hit on her.
He has put his camera in the bag on the center console and left it recording. And so the audio of this conversation is captured.
I've really fallen in love with you. You know, for the last year and a half, you're about the only thing I can think about. And just, for example, when we were sitting on the couch, it just felt like you were very, you know, I mean, I was extremely aroused, and I think you were somewhat aroused, at least I thought.
I don't know where you're going with this.
That audio was an opportunity to hear Susan in her own voice, telling Steve in no uncertain terms she was not interested.
I'm kind of meaning to talk to you about this, because I realized the last time I came over and that my own father doesn't kiss me and you kiss me, and I didn't like that.
She was extremely upset about that and disturbed, but even more disturbed when Josh just said that that's his dad.
I mean, he was obsessed with Susan. He was absolutely obsessed, and he wanted to talk about it. To me, this was the headline. And it also put a target on Stephen's back. And maybe he had something to do with this. The focus was less on Josh, and it shifted straight to Josh's father, because it was so creepy.
Susan Powell disappeared from her home near Salt Lake City on December 6, 2009. Since then, no word, nothing.
The Powells, they had this entire campaign of their own, and it was to make Susan look bad. It was to make her look like she was promiscuous, like she was looking to leave the marriage and abandon her children.
Susan Cox kept a diary, a secret diary.
Let's stay focused on the journals, okay? Because I think that's very interesting.
I believe that Susan had a liaison with somebody who disappeared the same week she did. She was very open sexually, and when I read her journals, it's clear that most of the relationships she got into with males were ones that she initiated.
Basically, Josh and Stephen, on their own stupidity, were telling, hey, this is, you know, the Holy Grail. This is telling us where Susan is. This is telling us how Susan acted. So that gave us the nexus through the judicial system to get into the house.
When Josh moved in with his father shortly after his wife's disappearance, he took some things from his Utah home, including Susan's journals.
Susan Powell's diaries have taken center stage. According to the search warrant left at the Powell's home, police came looking for 7 very specific diaries, all written by Susan. Diaries that her husband insists will help explain her disappearance.
They went through everything in the house, including all of Steve's, files, journals, computers.
They also find Steve Powell's collection of voyeur videos. Steve Powell is doing things like sliding mirrors under the bathroom door, attempting to get images of Susan while she's undressed.
I love putting her underwear against my face, just smelling her scent.
In his walk-in closet, there was a filing cabinet that was locked. And once we got into that, that was kind of like the unwanted treasure that we found.
Police say inside Powell's bedroom, they found thousands of images of mostly young girls, many naked, being videotaped without their knowledge. Prosecutors say 2 former neighbors, sisters just 7 and 12, were repeatedly videotaped while bathing. Police said Powell shot from his bedroom window into the neighbor's bathroom window using a telephoto lens.
They've looked at Steve Powell, the suspect in Susan's disappearance, and ruled him out, but it's obviously of great concern to detectives as they're scouring through all the material they take out of Steve Powell's home when they see underage neighbor girls undressed on Steve Powell's tapes.
Powell entered a plea of not guilty to 14 counts of voyeurism and 1 count of child pornography.
Stephen Powell was eventually convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison for possession of child pornography.
It became apparent eventually these boys were at imminent risk of harm.
The best part that came out of the search warrant with Steve's house was Child Family Services of Washington stepped in and shared with us that they would take custody of the children.
The boys, ages 4 and 6, were taken last night by the state, and now Susan's father is fighting to keep them with him.
They were going to be placed, relative placement with us, so we were essentially foster parents. Josh didn't want them with us.
My sons are safe with me. They're safe in my home. They're safe with my family.
I think Josh's main fear probably was that once Charlie started talking to their grandparents, the story would get out.
They were saying things like, our mommy went with us on the trip but didn't come back. We can only see our mom again if we go camping again.
Braden drew the picture of a minivan with stick people inside, and who's this? Oh, that's me. Who's that? That's Charlie. Who's that? That's Daddy. And he said, and he volunteered, Mommy's in the trunk.
We wanted to interview them.
Will you sit right there?
So I wrote the search warrant for that.
Charlie, has anybody talked to you about your mom? No?
I not know where she is. She got lost in somewhere.
During that interview, it's very clear that Charlie has been coached. His answers are extremely evasive.
We can't talk about Susan or camping. I always keep things as secrets.
The only thing we got out of that time was that at one point he said that she went camping, but she didn't come home with them. And then he kind of clammed up after that.
I didn't want to talk to you on this long. I mean it on this many minutes. Now I'm done.
While the Coxes were fighting for custody of the kids and had temporary custody of the boys, they were still essentially wards of the state. Washington State had control over these children, and the Coxes were glorified foster care. So the boys are living with Grandma and Grandpa, and Josh is getting supervised visitation with the boys.
The visitation is at first understood to be taking place at a secure third-party facility. But in short order, Josh takes steps to rent his own house, and he begins pushing the social workers, asking them if they can move visitation to this new house that he's rented, because it's not Steve Powell's house. It shouldn't have the same concerns.
I think the boys were ones that originally told me, hey, we got to go to Daddy's house or something, and I went, oh, really? I was concerned about that.
They were very excited. They were thrilled about the new house, and they were thrilled about the yard at the new house.
I am in their best interest as their father, that I should be raising them.
Through December into early January, he was confident that his reunification motion was going to be granted.
Who has custody of your kids?
Well, that was doomsday for Josh Powell.
This is a story you can't write in a Hollywood script. No one would have thought in a million years that's how this story would have ended.
Josh, is there anything you'd care to say on your way in?
When Josh was fighting for custody of Charlie and Braden, it wasn't about being a father. It was about beating the Coxes.
The kids seemed like typical kids to a certain extent, but they were undergoing a lot of stress.
I think Josh went into that hearing on February 1st thinking he was going to get his kids back.
I was pretty positive that Josh was the one that killed Susan. I wanted to keep those boys out of that home as long as possible. I was going to West Valley going, hey, guys, we need something.
Pierce County authorities and investigators in Utah shared the common goal of protecting the boys. So the West Valley police in Utah passed along previously unreleased evidence recovered from the Powell's home.
When I pushed West Valley and they sent us the disc with the cartoon, incestuous images.
The West Valley City Police Department in Utah had found images on a computer taken out of the house in Sarah Circle way back in December of 2009 that were of great concern. They were characters from popular Nickelodeon shows engaged in sexual acts of incest.
The evidence was allegedly taken from Josh Powell's Utah home by investigators.
They raised very serious questions about Josh's ability to be a safe parent for the boys.
He denies ever looking at any kiddie porn. He denies any knowledge about any of these images that had purportedly been taken off of his computers. Illegal images? No. I asked Mr. Long, he saw nothing on there that he believed would be in violation of the law. Bad taste? I'll give you that from what he was describing to me.
And that's when the judge ruled that the boys would stay with the Coxes longer.
The images are enough that Judge Catherine Nelson is ordering Josh Powell to now undergo a psychosexual evaluation.
This is an exam where they measure aberrant arousal, so you can't lie. Because physically the arousal will show if you're into things that might be illegal.
He had to take psychosexual evaluation, which is one thing that I know he wouldn't pass, but it included a polygraph.
That means that Josh is going to have to do what he's avoided doing from the very first days after Susan disappeared, which is take a lie detector test.
He'd been able to get away with murder, so to speak, for a long time. But a polygraph, I think he was really afraid of. He didn't want to answer all these questions about Susan and how she went missing.
He truly had gone down in flames from being pretty sure that he was going to get his kids back.
Are you disappointed that he's not going to be coming home with you?
I think the error was taken out of him. He looked bad. You just saw his welfare diminish.
He looked more and more like a psychopath. He was running out of places to hide, and he was running out of options, and it was tearing him down as a person.
The custody hearing between Chuck and Josh essentially was put on pause. That was on February 1st. We know then that Josh spent the next 4 days preparing.
We know that he transferred some of his finances.
He gathered up some of the boys' things and toys, took them to Salvation Army and Goodwill. He bought 5-gallon gas cans and went and filled them with gas.
I said, look, I am afraid Josh is backed into a corner with the psychosexual and the polygraph. He knows there's no way he's going to beat those.
So the morning of Sunday, February 5th, Chuck had gone to church early.
I knew they were going for their visit, and they were making it clear to my wife and myself, we don't want to see him today. No, we don't want to go.
I picked up the boys. They were waiting with their grandmother, and I expected to return the boys in about 4.5 hours.
This is a story you can't write in a Hollywood script. No one would have thought in a million years that's how the story would have ended. When you talk about a tragedy, this is it.
The morning of Sunday, February 5th, Elizabeth Griffin Hall arrived at the rental house, parked out front, and as children do, Charlie and Braden got out of their car seats.
They rushed to the front door, which is what they always did. I was 1 or 2 steps in back of them. The kids just rushed in. I saw Josh for just 1 second. His eyes caught mine, and he had a look in his eyes.
She looks him straight in the face. He slams the door in her face and locks it.
I knocked and I knocked and I rang the doorbell and I started yelling at Josh, let me in. And I heard him say, Charlie, I've got a big surprise for you.
And immediately she smelled gasoline, and she knew it was an emergency situation.
I'm on a supervised visitation for a court-ordered visit, and something really weird has happened. I think I need help right away. He looked right at me and closed the door.
All right, we'll have somebody look for you there.
Okay, how long will it be?
I don't know, ma'am. They have to respond to emergency, life-threatening situations first. The first available deputy.
Well, this could be life-threatening. He went to court on Wednesday, and he didn't get his kids back. And this is really, I'm afraid for their lives.
Okay, has he threatened the lives of the children previously?
I have no idea.
All right, we'll have the first available deputy contact you.
February 5th, 2012, Super Bowl Sunday.
I went to church. I came home, Super Bowl Sunday.
I remember watching the Super Bowl that day and seeing the reports come in.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John DeCepolo. We are interrupting your programming for some breaking news.
And I got a call from my neighbor, and he said, change the channel.
I was actually in Indianapolis. The Patriots were playing the Giants at the Super Bowl.
Patriots lead the Giants 10-9 at halftime.
And I was there with my family. And it was halftime, and Madonna was about to take center stage.
As Madonna takes the stage to perform Vogue, Abby's in the stadium concourse trying to absorb the text she just received.
I get a text, pops up on my phone.
There has been a fatal explosion at the home of...
Oh my God, and I thought like natural gas or something, and they said they found 3 bodies.
There's a fire, the house exploded, and we're hearing that Josh and Charlie and Braden were inside.
This can't be, this can't be.
And I thought, no, that can't be real. I would have heard something.
And I called Susan's father. I said, Chuck, is it true?
Chuck, is it true? Is it true? He said, yes. And I didn't even say goodbye. I just hung up the phone and started crying.
Went talked to his sergeant or whatever. He said, yeah, they're there, and they're dead.
Honestly, I wasn't surprised. And the actions that he made after she went missing, I never underestimated him.
And then to find out the details.
Found the hatchet, the boys, and one of the gas cans.
And then after he had incapacitated them. He arranged them on the floor next to each other and poured gasoline on and around them and around the house. And then he sat on a gas can and lit a match, and they were still alive.
Police say there's clear evidence Josh planned out this house explosion and meant to kill himself and his children.
The morning of the 5th, he sent a couple of text messages and voicemails to people, essentially saying goodbye. His sister Alina found one when it was too late to intervene after the explosion.
What did he say? I think he said, "Hello, this is Josh.
I am not able to live without my sons, and I'm not able to go on anymore. I'm sorry to everyone."
He had lost.
You know, he used the axe first, and to find out that he said to them, you know, "I have a surprise for you." Any little bit of doubt that anyone could have possibly had that Josh killed Susan had to have gone out the window. The fact that he could have done that to his kids.
This wasn't tragic. I don't know anything else I could have done. And they're still dead. My daughter's still missing, and now the children are dead. I had them safe. They were in my care. They were gone.
I was frustrated with...
Be accountable and make them pay for the deaths of their grandchildren.
You'll cut that out of the tape, right?
Hey, Braden. Still. That's the saddest part, is you look at photos of Josh and Susan, Charlie and Braden, and you think about what could have been. Those boys deserve to grow up, and they never got the chance.
We've been robbed of 3 precious lives, and it's just unthinkable that the same person did it.
Why take the kids? Why? It makes absolutely no sense.
My worst nightmare had just happened. But I went from praying that somehow Susan was alive to praying now that she was dead so that she could greet her boys in heaven.
Flowers, balloons, and stuffed animals offered in memory of Charlie and Braden Powell.
Why would he go through so much to get custody of the boys only to murder them?
Come here, Charlie.
Here we go, Charlie. Hey, buddy.
Well, one of the possibilities is he destroyed the evidence. Those boys were starting to talk. And by destroying the evidence, basically he committed murder on his 2 boys.
It shows how much of a monster he really was. And it shows how many people dropped the ball in this case.
I was frustrated with the Child Protective Service Agency. Why would they put this single woman in charge of these boys and send her into the lion's den? It made no sense to me.
I wanted to get the kid.
She did what she could. She did everything right. There's no blame on her at all. Anybody puts any blame on her, it's misdirected.
The Coxes have filed a lawsuit against the state of Washington on behalf of Braden and Charlie. It's a wrongful death lawsuit, and their position is that the state of Washington put Josh's parental rights before the welfare of these boys.
The Cox family lawsuit didn't include Elizabeth Griffin Hall or any other individuals as defendants.
The fact is, she was not the one that made the decision for this to be in the home. So to a certain extent, she's lucky she's alive. And she's, I think, a victim in a lot of ways, too.
They filed this lawsuit, $35 million for Braden blown up.
Everybody? You have a civil case against the state that started in February, was disrupted because of COVID-19.
Please now give your attention to Mr. Buck as he presents the plaintiff's final argument.
It is out of the state's failure to live up to their own primary directive of assuring the safety of the children that this tragedy was born. What was the place that had the least protection? Josh Powell's home. What about the level of risk? Then the state learned of the boy's statements. It learned of this incest images. It learned that he was going to have to undergo a psychosexual evaluation, a polygraph. If the state had followed its policies, its guidelines, common sense, investigated, had visitations where it was supposed to have them, none of this would have happened. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this will be the only and final time that you hear from the state in this matter. The state took this very serious. They did their job. They followed their policies. Yes, the fact that Susan Powell was missing was known, but after more than 2 years after her disappearance, still no arrest, no charges against Josh Powell. It actually takes facts and proof to remove a child from their parent, to keep them out of the home. The guides on visitation shows the #1 preferred location is at a parent's home. That's why transition to a home occurs. The goal in these type of cases is always family reunification. I'm going to submit to you that Mr. Powell is the sole cause of the murder of his sons. It was not due to any negligence by the state of Washington. It was Mr. Powell who did this.
The truth of the fact of the matter is, they're the only ones who could have protected the children at that point. They're the ones with responsibility.
Has the jury reached a verdict, ma'am?
All please rise.
Please be seated.
Court is reconvened.
Has the jury reached a verdict, ma'am?
If it pleases the court, we have.
Was the state of Washington negligent? Answer, yes. What do you find plaintiff Charles Powell's total amount of damages? $57,500,000. Braden Powell's total amount of damages, $57,500,000.
For 8 years, the Cox family has been trying to find justice. And it took us a long time. And we took a long hiatus with the pandemic. Today, justice has been meted out.
What I intend to do is use the award to try and help other people in that so that we can save more children.
Jury members told ABC News they didn't believe any one individual at Child Protective Services was responsible for what happened. They blame a systematic failure for the tragedy.
It just came down to this. You cannot have reunification, as your goal at the expense of child safety. And, lawsuits change things. Brown versus Board of Education, Roe v. Wade. That's how things change.
So 2020 reached out to several agencies in both states, and they declined to comment or refer us to other departments. In the end, we were unable to get an answer to our questions. Could the actions of these agencies, or their inactions, have contributed to the murders of Braden and Charlie Powell?
It should have never have got to the point where you had Josh getting his kids into that house and blowing it up.
I think that it is just one of those cases that will always kind of have a place in Utah's consciousness. And I think a big part of that is we still don't know what happened. We still don't know where Susan Powell is.
Does everyone believe that he harmed his wife? The answer is yes. That's what everyone believes. But what you believe and what you can prove are two different things.
Josh's actions are definitely an admission of guilt. She's going to divorce him. If he can't have her, nobody will. So he kidnaps Susan and most likely murders her and disposes of her body. Where? Nobody knows.
The last that she was seen, and Josh, who never cooked, made pancakes for dinner. People think he poisoned her, of course, because he made them separate. She felt sick. and sleepy. Giovanna Owens saw that, and then she's never heard from again.
I know there are 10,000 abandoned mines in Utah. That's a lot of places where you can dump a body.
There's so many theories, I don't know which one it is, but I guarantee you.
Susan Cox Powell did not leave that home willingly at midnight to go camping.
This was a family that was not known to the West Valley City, Utah Police Department. They had never been called to the house. But in other ways, Josh was just a classic abuser. He was controlling.
My heart absolutely breaks for Chuck and Judy Cox. Think about what this couple has gone through. They lost their daughter. Both of their grandbabies were horrifically butchered. And the only 3 people that could shed any light on this are dead.
Her story will continue to live on and inspire others to move in the right direction, to move towards good relationships and get out of bad situations, abusive situations.
When did you think, I'm in a cult?
I probably realized I was in a cult the moment the cat stuff started happening. The message Cheryl would give about these cats were they were of God and that we were to care for them with the utmost care and love and attention. And if we save these cats today, we will be saved in the day of Armageddon or the apocalypse. So we had to take the cats. No matter how many, no matter how much work it was, we had to take the cats if she said, take these cats. You couldn't say no. You did not have the right to say no. Like if we said no, then we'd have to leave. And why would you leave the person that's gonna save you when hell's gonna break out on earth? Why would you leave that person? You better just, buck up and take care of the cats so you don't die.
This is a story about family, faith, and felines. In the Pacific Northwest, a Pentecostal-style preacher
How deep has the covenant cut in your hearts?
manipulates her followers' emotions.
The words she uses, the pulpit that she uses to draw people into her web, that's dangerous.
How come I was such an idiot?
Embraces bizarre beliefs.
Behold, the bride is crossed as she is unveiled to come forth into her power.
She went from being a woman of God to a nutcase.
Our homes were filled with cats. Cats.
And moves to silence her doubters.
One violent move, one severe cut, and Jesus' head snaps.
She pounded it in my head that he's got to go.
Cheryl wanted Mark killed. Remember, always think like Satan if you want to figure stuff out.
I think once you start down the path of evil, there's no end to it.
These photos go back, some of them before Mark and I got married in 2006. Mark had 2 boys and a girl. I had 2 boys and a girl. It was seemingly a perfect matchup. My name's Mary Walker, and I'm the wife of Mark Walker. We came together with a lot of hopes and dreams for a blended family, for the Brady Bunch. And this was, back at a time when we were still operating under the illusion that we had a great future in front of us as a blended family. And it was really apparent real fast that that was going to be difficult to achieve. Mark was really transparent and honest about what his ex-wife, Cheryl Walker Ruthven, was involved in, even at that time. When Mark first told me about Cheryl, I tried to get as familiar as I could with her. Although, it's hard to think about, how do I take it that his ex-wife is the bride of Christ? Not sure what to do with that.
Behold the bride.
Cheryl Walker Ruthven is a Pentecostal-style preacher based out of Bellingham, Washington. Her charismatic fire and brimstone-style preaching has attracted around 200 followers, and she's gained a reputation for pushing the boundaries of traditional faith.
I think the first time that I met Mark's children was a trip to Whistler. We took Mark's 3 children and my 3 children, and then a friend. So there was baptism by fire, 7 kids, and a dog. When I first met Cheryl, it was after that trip to Whistler. When we got to the house, Cheryl was already in the driveway waiting for us. And so we went into the house and started unloading suitcases out of the car. And all of a sudden, Cheryl came in through that opened door. And she's in the living room. And I just remember standing in the kitchen thinking that Cheryl was a bit of a threat.
Mark and Cheryl divorced in 2004. The settlement resulted in 50-50 joint custody of the children, but eventually the children spent more and more time with Cheryl. Now, in 2008, Mark's continued presence in the lives of the children is a source of frustration for Cheryl.
Mark never bowed the knee to what Cheryl wanted. And Cheryl wanted to be the prophet, the pastor, and he was to be the subservient one, the one to uplift and allow her to follow God's calling in her ministry. So when he did not do that and he called her out on her, she was angry. And not only did he call her out on her, he divorced her and he fought for his rights for visitation with his kids. She did not want him to have any part of their lives or her life.
One violent move, one severe cut, and Jesus' head snaps, and she has his attention.
She was always trying to put herself out there as a victim of Mark. She was telling her congregation that he was manifesting demons, that he was a devil named Baphomet, and that I was a reincarnated temple whore named Ashra.
Desperate people do desperate things.
She despised Mark. She thought he was of the devil. And at the time, anybody in that inner circle, she would tell us he needs to die. That for her to go forward with what God's calling her to do, he had to die. So I remember in these smaller groups of prayer circles praying for his death. So I did that, and I'm very ashamed of it now. But back then, I thought he was evil and that he needed to go.
In 2008, a new member enters Cheryl's community, a man from New Mexico named Rick Madrid. And almost immediately, he sticks out from the rest of the congregation.
I'm a heathen kind of guy, you know what I mean? I'm just a guy. I ride motorcycles, and I grew up on horses and horseback, and I'm one of those guys. I drink beer, and I fight.
So Rick Madrid visited the church as a guest, and Cheryl was on him really quick, love bombing him, prophesying over these great prophecies.
He had this reputation as kind of a bad boy. And there was a seduction that happened.
She's nice looking. So there was a physical attraction as well as, you know, this good girl that she proclaimed to be. And when her and I would be together, when we were together, I mean, I would have visions. And there was some weird stuff going on. I mean, there was times where her and I, we were making love, and I'd close my eyes, and we were floating down a river, and we were going under the water and in and out, down waterfalls. She got stronger and stronger the longer I was with her. She is something. I don't know what that is, but she is something.
He was seduced by her, and he ended up moving up to Bellingham, moved into the home, and then they married.
Everybody would walk around the church and proclaim how Mark is going to die. How she explained it was a spiritual thing. And I was the new spiritual father and the spiritual husband. I really thought that he was just going to fall over dead. I really did. She had told me constantly that Mark was supposed to die. And then he wasn't dying. And it was getting to her. It was bugging her bad.
And Cheryl starts commissioning Rick to do an evil deed.
In Cheryl's world, there are no accidents at all. So she pounded it in my head that he's got to go.
What will you do to attract my attention? How will I sort your prayers from all the others?
You never said no to the prophet. Never. And Cheryl wanted Mark killed.
Literally, she like pounded it in my head that he's got to go. She went and bought an AR-15. We shot and shot and shot. We shot 1,000 rounds probably. And then it was little questions like, so how far is that over there? So then I'd shoot it. Well, how about that one over there? Can you hit that one? So it was going farther and farther, right?
Mark and I lived here for 10 years. Rick Madrid was here several times. Cheryl was with him in the car. She was sitting next to him. She was probably taking him through the layout of our home. And he knew what our driveway, what our approach looked like. And she had him here telling him all those details about our everyday life. And one day it culminated with him being at the top of the driveway. Mark was outside. Rick Madrid had the rifle with him and he leveled the sights.
So I went down there one day and I sat down the road from his house. Him and his wife are outside. And I was in the pickup and I had him in the scope.
And he had the rifle with him and he leveled the sights and he had Mark in his sights. And he had a God moment. Yes. And he decided not to pull the trigger. And we're certainly glad he did.
Yes. I'm very grateful. My name is Mark Walker, and I am the father of 3 children that are in a cult. And my ex-wife is the leader of that cult. I didn't know at the time that Cheryl was saying that I was the devil. I didn't know at the time that she was telling everybody in the cult to pray for my death. I didn't know at the time that she was going around and having my kids talk about different ways to kill me. My own children? I don't want to believe that my kids are evil, but they might be. I think once you start down the path of evil, there's no end to it.
The way I think about it now is it's ridiculous, man. I would never have gone to do something like that. I know that I was manipulated. The guys in her church were soft-spoken. They have no balls. They're not men. And then when she met me, I was different. So she kind of had an idea of the kind of guy I am. I think she had planned it all along.
What do you think stopped you?
Had to be God. When I put the rifle down and I drove away, I just knew that God had intervened.
Now, there's something to keep in mind. Mark did not learn about this attempt on his life for several years, and he never reported it to the police. So any fallout about this alleged murder plot, at this point, it's just between Cheryl and Rick.
When I went home, I said, if Mark Walker is supposed to die, why did God just intervene and save his life? Explain that to me, Prophet. Oh, you're more full of than a Christmas turkey, I told her. But I could have easily taken him out. And because I didn't, Cheryl threw me out.
If there ever was time of criticism against Cheryl, she would nip it in the bud as fast as she could. She publicly humiliated people all the time. If you spoke illy about her and she found out, she would admonish you in front of everybody and embarrass you.
I watched her humiliate men in front of their wives by making false accusations. She's the prophet. When you say no to the prophet, you suffer the consequences. If you did not do what Cheryl wanted you to do, especially something of that magnitude, you could pretty much count losing your life.
I met Cheryl in Spokane, Washington. My mom told me that I should go meet this gal that was working at Nordstrom's. She was attractive, friendly, charismatic, so I asked her out. We only dated 6 months before we were married. I was 23. I didn't understand who she was and what she was thinking, and I didn't date her long enough to figure that out. 10 months after we were married, we had our first child. We had Colin first. 3 years later, we had Landon. 6 years later, we had Olivia. I felt like it was my responsibility to stay married and figure out how to make it work. I was raised in a very conservative Christian family, and I always wanted to go to church, and Cheryl wasn't into church until she found Gates of Praise. At Gates of Praise, you would see things like people speaking in tongues, people doing exorcisms, taking demons out of people, things that I wasn't used to.
When Mark met Cheryl, she didn't seem particularly interested in religion, which is curious. In some ways, her discovery of Gates of Praise and the time she spent there is the origin story of a cult leader.
Gates of Praise was led by Debbie Lynch, and Cheryl was very attracted to her preaching.
He's looking for the leaders that will say, I need to cross over.
They became very, very close to the point of, I would say it's almost like an affair. I don't know if they were ever physical. There's a question that I don't know the answer to, but Debbie made her kind of like an associate pastor, and she loved that position of leadership.
My time, people. You're either going to love me or hate me, but you better have an opinion by the end of this night. Amen?
Listening to her sermons, it's clear that Cheryl relished the attention of her congregants and found her power to be intoxicating. In 2001, she split with Debbie Lynch and established her own small church called Freedom Fire Ministries.
Cheryl had no training to be a pastor. She'd never read the Bible, barely.
The purpose of all demonic soul ties is to bring you under that spiritual canopy of authority.
It made no sense whatsoever.
So here's the godly soul tie, here's the ungodly soul tie. The ungodly will buddy up to the godly soul tie, and all of a sudden I will start manifesting symptoms of cancer.
But I guess if you say enough things over and over again, something will come true, and people believed that she was a prophet of God.
When I came into the ministry, it definitely was mainstream Christianity. And then as she began introducing these different religions, well, the diehards believed Cheryl was this prophet of God. And it wasn't Cheryl telling us to include these other religions, it was God telling us through Cheryl.
And the people that sit within the temples and the sanctuaries will not be held captive anymore by your hands.
She really was the joy in the center of this congregation. People wanted to be close to her. She was enigmatic, charismatic. She had a knack of reading people in the moment they met.
In the beginning, it was a place that you wanted to go because you felt that freedom, you felt that warmth, you felt that acceptance.
Come into the place where you can taste of what was and what is to be, that you walk in the wisdom of all ages.
As time progressed, we started getting into Catholic mysticism. We got into Egyptian alchemy, and then it was paganism and Wiccan and Mother Earth and chakras and crystals. There was a lot of talk about the end times. There was definitely this sense of dread, and something bad was about to happen. And we had, our only salvation was following Cheryl.
I didn't believe in what she was doing, but I wanted to stay close to my children because I was trying to figure out how exactly I could get them out of this thing that they were trapped in. But in a cult situation, you can't have any dissension. So anybody that doesn't believe has to be separated and culled from the group. She decided, well, I'll use the police to get rid of Mark. Cheryl accused me of pushing her. I didn't touch Cheryl. I spent a night in jail. And that's actually the night I said, okay, I have to call my divorce attorney. I got to get out of this.
Whatcom County dropped the charges against Mark because there was no evidence to support Cheryl's claim he was violent. Even so, it appears Cheryl has cunningly manipulated the criminal justice system to get the result she desired.
During the divorce, it was taught that I should never say anything negative about Cheryl in front of the kids. So what I tried to do is just love the kids. I tried to be dad to the kids. And then you find out that Cheryl was telling them to pray for my death, was telling them at dinner to go around the table and figure out ways to kill me. I was being a nice person. And it was very frustrating because I could see that I was losing. I didn't know what to do about it.
When the divorce was finalized, the custody arrangement was in fact a 50-50 split. And as Mark feared, it created a permanent fracture in his relationship with his kids. For Cheryl, sowing family division is part of a pattern.
I was a churchgoer in North Vancouver, and that's where I first met my wife. We got along famously. You know, the first 3 years of our marriage, we did almost everything together. But in 2002, things took a bit of a turn. That's when I was first informed about Freedom Fire Ministries and Cheryl. She just announced that she and her friend had been going there for some time. I was quite surprised by that because I worked 2 out of 3 Sundays. And on the Sundays that I was off, we were going to our church as though nothing was going on. And then, one day she just outright said that she was going to a place across the border and she wanted me to come. From the moment I said I would go, the demeanor of my wife and her attitude towards me changed, like total turnaround. All of a sudden, she was in love with me again.
What makes your covenant cut a full circumcised heart?
Cheryl would literally have everybody totally focused on her. Every word.
No fruits. They can't even sustain themselves, yet pour into somebody else. How come, people?
That was her favorite thing. Come on, people.
How much would you cast in, people?
On one occasion, I was there, and she had a pitcher of water and a new box of salt. She walks up to it, pours the salt into the water, stirs it up, and says, I need everybody to come up and drink of this salt water to purify, our souls or something along those lines. I can't help but think back in my mind about the Jonestown experience and how Jim Jones had run many trial runs prior to the poisoning of all his people that had followed him.
Jim Jones was a Messianic American cult leader in the 1970s who convinced followers, including women and children, to drink fruit punch laced with cyanide. The mass suicide resulted in the deaths of 900 people, including Jones himself. So this little saltwater communion that Rod observed is incredibly alarming.
This was a trial run. And I think she was taking note of any hesitancies, but I didn't see much of that at all. Everybody was willing to go and do it. My wife has now been there for at least a year, maybe longer, and my children exposed under this crazy ranting and raving about end times. I can just picture my wife ushering my children up to the Kool-Aid and hear her drink. Yeah, I was scared.
Kind of rusty. I was born into a Christian home. At a very young age, I knew I had to hide my true self. My first crush was on the girl in first grade, and I was in kindergarten. But because of the religious upbringing, I just knew I needed to hide that part of me. It was a time of fear, depression, sorrow. I would constantly be at the altar trying to pray the gay away. When I was 17 years old, I decided I'm going to teach myself to play the piano. I very much felt like everything was spiritual, everything was from God. So this gift of music was from God. So 2004 came along, and I was 27 years old at the time. I didn't feel like I truly fit into a spot where I could show my gifts in music. And I was looking for something more.
You say, God, I'm standing at the crossroads. I've heard the word, Father. Give me the guts to make the choice.
When I started attending Cheryl's church, it was lively. There was life. People were joyful and joyous. And my sister Rachel, she joined the ministry at the same time that I did, or quickly thereafter. One Sunday morning, I was sitting at the piano and Cheryl was sitting on the front row. And I just started playing and singing. And when I started singing, Cheryl started to weep and fell to her knees and started praying and crying. She's telling me, you have a gift inside of you, and when you speak to people, they will hear and they will be healed. And I'm like, what? Yes, this is what I want. But this beautiful, eloquent woman is speaking to me of what I dream of. So that connection between us was pretty strong.
Cheryl's power as a cult leader includes her ability to identify the needs and desires of others. But it's what she does with that knowledge that makes her dangerous.
I was definitely enamored by Cheryl. As she started drawing me in closer, I was falling in love with her, I guess you could say. One evening, she invited me to meet her at our church. We're in the church at the altar. It's just us. The lights are low. I went down to kneel next to her. And she turns to me and says, it's time for you and I to go into covenant. Meaning not necessarily like a marriage, but like being one with the other person. You trust each other, you belong to each other, and you do the work of the Lord together. And she said, for us to be in covenant, we have to kiss. So there on that altar floor, I went in 110%, and I kissed her. This is hard to talk about. It felt like forever in that moment, like I found the person I was going to be with forever. There were times she would tell me, now what you and I have, this isn't homosexual. This is from God. But there would be services where she would preach against homosexuality. Then a couple nights later, like, yeah, we're banging. I would say there probably was some conflict in my heart on that, but I was ready to lie my face off because I finally had what I wanted in a relationship with another woman. It was magical for those first 4 months. And then things changed. She had me in her bedroom and we're sitting on her bed and she says, this part is over. This part is done. We are no longer together like that. Everything went into like this whirlwind of heartbreak and I was crushed. I was in love with her. I was in the worst place in my life I have ever been in. When I look back at Cheryl pursuing me, I think it was about the music. I think it was about me bringing that extra oomph to what her ministry was through music. Looking back, that's what she wanted. But the sad part of it is I didn't leave the ministry. I believed that if I left her, that I would be in a horrible accident or I would just simply die because I stopped believing in her. And that's how deep she got into my psyche. That I could never leave her or God would strike me dead.
I'd like you to tell me what you hear.
Ringing.
It's not done yet. My name is Sanjan. I met Cheryl online on Spiritual Singles in June of 2009. She had her own church, About 100 to 125 people in her congregation in '09 when I was involved with her. She was well kept. The family was well kept. She looked good in lingerie. But the relationship was mostly compliance with Cheryl, and that went downhill really quickly. She didn't like the art I had in my house. I had paintings hanging, and among them are a couple of nudes. She declared the paintings portals for evil. She demanded that they be burned. I took $50,000 of the most beautiful paintings in the world and burned them in the backyard fire pit at Cheryl's demand. And I can still to this day not believe that I did that. I knew better. I looked at myself and said, how come I was such an idiot?
In her relationship with Sandra, Cheryl is clearly harnessing her ability to control, but this time on a subject outside of her church community. It's not long before Cheryl returns her focus back to the congregation and pushes them to new and strange places.
Cheryl had this knack of bringing in a new religion or a new practice and tying it to what we were already doing. We would be doing Catholic mysticism one night, and the next night we're out in the woods together around a fire singing songs to Mother Earth. As Cheryl began this direction with her congregation, she said it's time to start adopting cats.
Now, cat obsession in religion isn't entirely new. For example, the ancient Egyptians believed that cats were vessels that could be inhabited by their gods. But like most things Cheryl Ruthven adopts, she pushes her version to the extreme.
The message Cheryl would give about these cats were they were of God. And if we save these cats today, we will be saved in the day of the apocalypse. And that's when we changed to Eva's Eden.
Our shelter is a cage-free shelter. That means everyone can really interact with the kitty that they think is the right one for them.
Eva's Eden became a nonprofit organization that we started to go to shelters throughout Washington, and we would take their cats that were on the roster to be put down. We would bring them into our homes. We would bring them back to health, feed them, care for them, and then start taking them to Eva's Eden, which was now a public place people could come to on the weekend to adopt cats.
The cats that were there were adorable. I mean, who wouldn't want to adopt those cats?
But the thing about Cheryl, 1 or 2 cats saved was not good enough. So she began working with shelters across Washington. Volunteers would pick up between 30 to 50 cats, sometimes more.
People were required to leave their homes, their jobs, to come straight to the sanctuary to pick up their chosen cats. Cheryl would stand up and say, when you take these cats home, they are your number 1 priority. They come before your husbands and wives, and they come before your children. So they had to be fed first. All their areas had to be clean and spotless before you could even have breakfast and then get your children off for school. And then she made it a competition. She would say, well, they've got 35. Why can't y'all step up? Y'all need to step up. You have 20 cats in one room and the other 25 roaming your house. We had litter boxes literally in our living room, our dining room. It was disgusting. You could never keep the litter boxes clean. Have you ever smelt of a litter box that had not been cleaned in days or weeks? Well, multiply that about 100 times, and that's what your house smells like. I was pretty much a basket case. I was short-tempered. I cried a lot. I had a lot of meltdowns. When these cats came, If we said no, Cheryl would publicly humiliate you. I have examples of people being exiled from the church when they disobeyed her. They lost their jobs. They lost their housing. They lost their footing. I can't tell you how. She just had the connections.
What's your best? What do you treasure?
The cats were important to Cheryl because they were to be the vessels that would save all of us, I guess. The cats would eventually turn into a human. I don't know how to put it in words because it doesn't make sense. She went from being a woman of God
And God is really trying to teach us. We love the person, but we don't like the spirits.
to a nutcase.
Our killing is the death spirit. He's very powerful. And so that's what you're sensing. He's on his way.
I would go home and say to my husband, Ricky, I cannot do this. I don't care if she's called a prophet. I don't care if she's the one. I will never put Cheryl over you. And I will never put Cheryl over God. When I shared that with Ricky, he's like, we've got to get out of this, Connie.
How deep has the covenant cut in your hearts?
The demands that Cheryl is placing on these families are outrageous. The only bonds that they have left are to each other, to their loved ones. Cheryl is really testing their devotion to her. One of the questions I have is, what will Cheryl do if they finally break?
I went to my friend's house. She opened the door and I just fell apart. And I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. My kids have to come first, not the cats. My friend held me tight, let me cry. But I didn't even get home 15 minutes before there was a knock on the door because she had already told Cheryl everything that I had shared with her. Everything. This is evil. You have to have permission for everything. You can't leave. You can't go anywhere. You have to be approved by the prophet. And I knew that Cheryl would publicly humiliate our family, humiliate our children, do things that our kids could possibly never get past. I wasn't willing to let my children be humiliated. Never.
Cheryl's control over her followers is powerful enough that members are policing each other on her behalf. So you have to wonder, how much worse will it get?
Lots of family photos of just good times through the year. But as we continued to be a family, you know, the anger grew on the part of his children. Their resentment became more and more apparent. I always felt like they were really being used as pawns by Cheryl. Like they were vehicles for her anger toward Mark. But there came a time when Mark came to the realization that if I ever saw his children, that I should run the other way and call 911 because there was only one reason why they would be here, and that would be to kill me.
You want to come up here? This is her favorite spot. Ugh. Come on. That's where she loves to lay down and look at her kingdom. I knew I was in a cult about 2007, 2008. There was a point in time where Cheryl shut the doors and no newcomers could come in. We became a secret religion. And the cat rescue was a front that we hid behind. That's what the outside saw. They didn't see what was on the inside. Our homes were filled with cats. Cats, 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 cats. If you can imagine the distress a cat's in, with being around 30 cats, what are they gonna do? They're gonna piss on the walls. They're gonna scratch the carpet. They're gonna scratch the walls. A typical home had between 14 and 30 cats in it. I had 17 in my home at that time. The home usually smelled like bleach, a combination of bleach and cat piss. People's homes were being destroyed. People were losing sleep. Cheryl would have us being up every 3 hours to make sure that they're okay and feed them and clean them. It was overkill. It was too much. I think that's probably where those seeds started to grow in my mind that this is a little bit bull. My sister and I were so close, but we were always afraid to talk to each other about our true feelings. Like, we never talked about our concerns about what was going on, because if I told Rachel, or if Rachel told me something, what if Rachel told Cheryl what I just said? People would do this. People would tattle on other people, and then when Cheryl found out, she would act upon it swiftly. She publicly humiliated people all the time. I knew I needed to get out of there, but I was so groomed, or I was so afraid I couldn't act on it, and I didn't want to leave my sister.
I am the Alpha and I am the Omega. I am the beginning and I am the end. I am the start and I am the finish.
This is really dangerous. Cheryl is demanding trust from all her followers, but she's also creating distrust within the group, weakening the bond they all have with each other. And she's always looking to push it one step further.
We, as a ministry, went and saw Da Vinci Code together. And that is probably the pivotal point of Cheryl beginning to say she is Mary Magdalene. She has come back to the earth now as Cheryl, but she truly is Mary Magdalene.
It's interesting that Cheryl chose Mary Magdalene, because we know that she pulled her inspiration from religious texts, from pop culture, from all over. And in the early 2000s, the Da Vinci Code was hugely popular. First the novel and then the movie. The revelation in Da Vinci Code is that Mary Magdalene was no prostitute. She was Jesus's wife.
My bride is coming forth in power, cloaked in my son's blood in this hour. Bride of power, people.
Cheryl is now portraying herself as Mary Magdalene, wife of Jesus, and her followers are buying it.
Communions with Cheryl, at times she would prick her finger or cut it and then squeeze the blood out into the communion, and then we would drink the communion because she was basically female Jesus, and we were to consume her blood. It kind of grossed me out a little bit, but you conform. Everybody does conform, or you pay the price. So I drank the communion with her blood in it.
Cheryl is constantly pushing her followers out of their comfort zone, testing their boundaries, keeping them on their toes. But as she refines her control tactics, you have to ask yourself, what is she ultimately after? What's the point of all this?
I was expecting a income tax return check. We had already talked about using to pay off some bills and maybe get a little bit ahead, not much, right? The check arrived, and I didn't know about it. My then wife took the check to the bank and cashed it and took the money out and opened another bank account. I had felt in my mind that maybe she was planning something.
When that transpired, I became concerned. Something just didn't feel right. Hi, I'm Rod's sister. My name is Carol.
Rod has something that not everyone has in this situation. He's got family members outside Cheryl's grasp who know how to research, and that's what they do. His sister Carol compiles a file of all sorts of correspondence with Cheryl, thinking maybe we're going to need this down the road.
What happened next was what happened in September when my brother, out of the blue, was given an ultimatum.
She came up to me and said, you know, I have until the September 24th to submit to Cheryl and her teaching, leadership, I believe she actually called it leadership, and turn over the family finances to my wife, or she was going to leave with the children.
That's stunning that somebody would say something like that to a spouse, that if you don't comply with what I want from you, I'm going to take everything you value from you. How much worse can it get? It's as bad as it gets.
That was a Saturday, and on a Monday, I went to work as I always did. Everything was normal in my household. And I came home from work, and the house was empty. And I went into my son's room, and there were all these goodbye cards. I had absolutely no idea where my children were, where she was. I came to understand that she had been plotting this for some time.
Now, that was on a Monday. Tuesday, we were in court. Well, all the research was ready to go. We got before the judge that day, and Rod went through everything systematically.
The judge alluded to the fact that my wife had surrendered her autonomy to Cheryl. The judge at that time believed that Cheryl and the ministry and its members posed a clear and present danger to the children.
My brother was given interim sole custody, sight unseen, even though we did not know where the former wife and the children were. So for the next number of days, we were racking our brain trying to figure out where they could be.
I was terrified. Where is my wife gone? If she made it across the border, they're going to hide her. And who knows where? Am I ever going to see my kids again? You know, my worst fears had come to fruition.
The kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent will take it by force. There's the cut of covenants.
My wife was gone. We still didn't know where she was. They were gone for 8 days, and I received a phone call. And she said she was going to return the children to me because the court had ordered her to do so.
So the children are with Rod, and for 6 months, Rod and his wife attended marriage counseling with a minister whose focus was on reconciliation.
My wife declared in this counseling that she was no longer going to Freedom Fire and that she had returned to the church where she and I had met. I ultimately believed that she had left because, 6 months had gone by. Every sign had showed that she was not attending there. We would go to the court and announce that we were forgoing divorce and that we were going to return together as a family.
Now, there's another element to this plan. Rod agrees to let the children change their primary address to her house while they look for a new house that the family will eventually move into, and they'll all be back together, reunited. But it doesn't turn out the way Rod expected.
I remember her sitting in a lounge chair in her backyard, and I went to talk to her, and she said, I've been going to Freedom Fire the whole time. I've now established status quo with the children here, and I'm keeping them with me. It totally blew my mind. Everything was going in the right direction. My family was about to be restored, and now it was all a dream. I was financially broken, emotionally broken, and I did not have the means to fight.
She has deceived him. She's tricked him into getting the kids because she knows that now that the kids, with his consent or with her, it's going to make it that much harder to unwind it and for him to get the kids back. Now, the financial angle to Rod's situation is interesting. It sure seems that Cheryl and his wife intended to shake him down. But if you look more closely, a pattern seems to emerge. It sure looks like Cheryl creates division among her followers and then exploits them for financial gain.
Cheryl always spent more than I made. And I made a pretty good living. In the divorce settlement, if you calculate everything that I gave her in that package, it added up to about $750,000. Even though she told the congregation and my children that I wasn't paying child support, that I'd left her destitute.
All offerings that we give within our temple are not equal offerings. Our tithes we are commanded to do.
Cheryl would just rail into us over and over again, tithe and offerings, give money for this, give money for that. I definitely gave above and beyond. When I did cash out on my ESOP with the company I was with, I had about $100,000 in my pocket, and I would say at least half of it went to Cheryl. But money wasn't truly going to where she said it was going. It was to better enhance her and her family's lives.
Cheryl had millions. We barely had thousands. But she wanted everybody's. In 2009, we adopted our 6th kid. That particular year, the Internal Revenue, they were paying adoptive families monies back, especially if you were adopting special needs children. We ended up with the refund being $28,000. We gave her $7,000 of it, not to mention the amounts of money that we gave toward the cats. Cheryl was getting the cats from the shelters at no cost. But we did have to pay for all the food and the litter, and then we had to pay adoption fees. Then all of that went into Cheryl's pocket. Each cat was no less than $75. And even if you adopted 2, you still didn't really get a break. You still had to pay $150. We would have to buy particular cat food, the particular cat litter, and we had to buy it from Cheryl. Cheryl bought it in lots, and then we were required to buy it from Eva Zedin. It was actually very costly. And, you know, for us to find out later on that the monies that we were giving was going for her to have plastic surgery, breast implants, and increase her woman size or whatever, it hurt me.
This is unbelievable. She is a consummate grifter with 150 followers. Each household has at least 20 to 30 cats. It seems like she's making probably hundreds of thousands of dollars off the backs of her followers. It's almost like this twisted parasitic game. Once she has a follower compliant, she's going to extract all the value she can. And the key to compliance is to separate her followers from the people that give them strength. You divide and you conquer. You divide, you conquer. It goes on and on.
And the blood came from the mercy seat, and it bubbled and it came down.
The sacrifice.
You were family until you weren't. She wanted us separated. I think that if she had her way, she would have separated Ricky and I. And Ricky did speak that one time. He's like, I feel like she's trying to tear us apart, and I don't understand why. He says, I believed that she was real in the beginning, but if she's a real, true prophet of God, why is she trying to separate us? We were getting phone calls about my father-in-law and how he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and how we needed to get home if we wanted to have any time with Dad. And so I know it may sound awful, but we used that, and we didn't let anybody say no. We took a trip. We come all the way down to Louisiana. I could actually tell you the date. It was July 5th, 2012. We drove out of Bellingham, Washington. It was truly a freedom. And it wasn't until after we got out that she figured out that we were not standing behind her. We did not tell Cheryl exactly where we were going. It was for our own protection. I know they still were rough a little bit after we moved to Louisiana, but they weren't as rough as they were in Washington. And we didn't adopt you so that you'd have a miserable life. We adopted you so you could have a good life.
My name is Faith Hughes, and I am Connie Gibbs' daughter. I was adopted at the age of 6, so when we left Washington, I think I was 12. I think if we did not leave, I don't know what would have happened to our family, but I don't think that we would probably be together.
I don't think we would be together now either, if we hadn't left. You understand the danger that we were in the middle of? Just, I guess that's where I should tell you I'm sorry.
When we were down to Louisiana, I was glad that they did that. I wanted friends, and I wanted my family, and I wanted my happiness. So I was actually very grateful that it happened the way it did.
It was Olivia's 18th birthday. I had lunch with her the Wednesday before her birthday, and I told her that I wanted to give her a present and that I wanted to see her on her birthday. And so I was surprised on her birthday when I couldn't get a hold of her, and her phone was dead. So then I tried Cheryl's phone, and it was dead. And then I tried the boys' phone, and they were dead. And so I thought, well, I better go out to the house and see what's going on. I went up to the house. I saw there were no cars in the driveways, and I could see in the window that all the furniture and everything was gone. And I initially rang the doorbell, and then I could see in the door it was completely empty. I was frantic and devastated, and I called my wife, and I was at a loss for what to do. Where could they be? I had no idea what was happening.
Cheryl's move was based on her youngest daughter, Olivia, turning 18. Midnight of that night, all phones that they had were turned off. All phone numbers that Mark Walker had ceased to exist, and they traveled to Tennessee that night. Cheryl told all of us in church services, lie to leave. So the kids were lying to their father. He had no clue. Just one day they were gone.
Prior to Olivia becoming 18, there was a parenting plan that said that we'd share 50-50 custody until she was 18 and graduated from high school. So I then went to the school, and I got to the school, to the counselor, and the counselor said, oh, didn't you know that she graduated early, that she graduated a month ago? At that point, I knew that they were gone, and I was never going to see my kids again.
I really feel it was because Cheryl wanted to give it to him. She wanted to teach him a lesson that would break his heart in two. She succeeded in doing a very cruel thing to him.
It's painful. I mean, it's painful at the time. It's painful now. The question is, what should I do about it, or what could I do about it? I wish I had the answer to that. I really do.
Everything indicates that Cheryl had been planning this move for years, and that she felt Mark's presence in the life of their children was a constraint on her spiritual ambitions. I mean, she allegedly tried to have the guy killed, for goodness sake. Now that she's escaped the watchful eye of her nemesis, what's next? What does she plan to do?
Do you not know that I am perfecting you in this? That I am creating something so beautiful? Something that I wish to call forth with such a power in this hour, but it only comes by the hand of some.
As we were preparing to move, Cheryl said, "You don't tell anybody you're moving because of me or the cats." I was going to caravan with this family that was driving this bus for Cheryl. And in the bus was cats, chickens, guns, and gold. We were moving all the precious items for Cheryl. It was so shady.
What kind of guns?
So the guns were in the long cases. So whatever kind of gun you would hold like this. I was in turmoil. I was lying to my parents about why I was moving. I was lying to my job and people I cared about at my job why I was leaving. It felt like boulders in my heart to have to lie. I knew I needed to get out of there, but I was so groomed or I was so afraid I couldn't act on it.
Eventually, Mary on Facebook was doing searches, and somebody posted that Cheryl and Olivia bought a horse in Tennessee, and that's how we ended up finding them.
When she moved to Maury County, she bought a 42-acre piece of property up on a hill with cash for almost $1 million.
I called the sheriff and said I would like to have a welfare check done on my adult children. The sheriff, instead of calling my adult kids, called Cheryl, who's their abuser in my mind. Cheryl, of course, told him that I was a terrible human being and, you know, the devil. And so when I called back to the sheriff, he basically said, well, you're abusive, you're not to be in contact with them, and if you come here, we'll arrest you.
When I found that out, that really pissed me off. Why would a man who's a law enforcement officer make a call like that? My guess was he saw the voluptuousness of her top end. I could be wrong, sorry to his wife, but they were bowling balls in a tight sweater.
Now, remember when Rod got that court order that prevented his ex-wife from taking the children and moving into the United States? Well, because of that court order, his ex-wife and children could not move with Cheryl to Tennessee. But they did continue to follow her from afar.
I knew that my former wife, given the opportunity, would pick up, drop everything, and go to wherever Cheryl would go. She was so locked into everything Cheryl presented to her. Unfortunately, my children today are still, through their mom and her connection, still with Cheryl, under her control.
What would you say to anyone who's watching who still follows Cheryl?
My advice is run. Run as fast as you can, as far as you can. Grab your family, leave everything behind, and go. Get away while you can. You could be next.
The words she uses, the pulpit that she uses, the power she invests upon herself to suggest that she's God here on earth, and to utilize even her sexuality to draw people into her web. That's dangerous. I've heard people say, oh, she's done so much for me. I have to ask, what has she done for you?
I moved to Columbia, Tennessee, got a job, trying to make ends meet, living with all these families and cats, and it wasn't fun. I wanted out of her control. I wanted out of this ministry. I wanted to live my life and be me. So I produced music. I met another musician, and we clicked right away. And I began to confide in her this hell that I was living in, and I don't know how to get out. Where do I go? You know, I've got 14 cats still in my care, and she says, just move in with me. Just leave, and we'll make it work. She gave me the courage to leave. I came out to my sister and said, Rachel, this is the relationship I had with Cheryl. We had an intimate relationship, and I'm gay, and I met another woman, and I've fallen in love with her, and I'm leaving the cult. And my sister cried, and I cried, and we finally were able to tell each other all the painful things that we went through under Cheryl.
Mary's experience perfectly illustrates why cult leaders like Cheryl isolate their followers, because social interactions are the biggest threat to their influence. Sometimes all it takes is one ally. It could be a friend or it could be a family member to empower, to convince the follower to just walk away.
I said, Cheryl, I met someone online. I've fallen in love with her, and I'm leaving to live with her. I'm done. She started love bombing me again. She would send me these letters, emails of how much she cares for me and that she needs me in her life, and please don't leave. And I said, no, I need to go. I've seen other people walk away from her and she turned nasty and vindictive. She was not that way with me. The next day or two, I got a call from her strongman, the Muscles, saying, you need to destroy everything you have, pictures, songs, videos, you destroy it right now. And I was so desperate to get out of her claws. I was like, fine, I don't care, I'll delete everything. And I did, and I regret it. I should have just said I would. And no, I deleted almost everything. The reason why I think she was much softer with me is because she's afraid of what I'm doing right now. I'm talking about my story, and I'm stepping up to say, this is what happened.
After we became aware that Cheryl might have commissioned a hitman to kill us, we decided that the best defense is a strong offense. As soon as I found out where they were, I put up the Facebook page, Is There a Cult in Columbia, Tennessee? Just trying to make people aware of, the devil next door. And then it evolved into a vehicle for other people to tell their story.
Mary Walker's online efforts draw the attention of a journalist who eventually publishes a long-form essay about Cheryl's ever-evolving cat-centric ministry. As the public in Columbia, Tennessee is becoming more aware that a despot lives among them, Cheryl's paranoia grows.
I was home and, I had hoped that Cheryl had been long, but in the past, on a rare occasion, I decided to look up her name. And up comes this podcast.
From Past Media, this is The Opportunist, a podcast about regular people who turn sinister.
We shot and shot and shot. We shot 1,000 rounds probably.
This person by the name of Rick Madrid is essentially admitting that he had been in a conspiracy recruited by Cheryl Walker Ruthven to commit murder in Washington State.
Now, keep in mind, while Cheryl's congregation knew who Rick Madrid was, prior to his appearance in this podcast, the alleged plot to murder Mark Walker was not widely known.
I thought that her and I, once we consummated our marriage, that Mark was going to die. She had her whole church pray for Mark to die. The whole church. So she pounded it in my head that he's got to go.
What Rick Madrid said in the tape, that's alleged. We don't know. But should it be investigated? Absolutely.
Mark and Mary Walker did not learn about this alleged attempt on Mark's life for several years, and they never reported it to the police, so it's never been investigated properly. There are a lot of questions about this whole affair, so we tried to locate Rick Madrid. And we were surprised by what we found.
Hello?
Hi, is this Rick Madrid?
No, Rick Madrid passed away a couple of years ago.
Oh, he did?
Yes, he did. He had sleep apnea, and they claimed, the doctors claimed that he just died in his sleep.
Oh, man, I'm sorry to hear that. I had some questions about his experience with Cheryl. Do you know anything about Rick's time with Cheryl?
No, I sure don't. He moved out there to Washington and was up there about a year and then came back home and didn't talk about any of it.
So Rick appears on this podcast, and months later he dies. Could that be a coincidence? Absolutely. We know that Rick was living in New Mexico when he passed. And New Mexico does not release death certificates to anyone but family members. And we couldn't locate a published obituary, so we cannot independently confirm his death. For former followers of Cheryl, that raises a lot of questions.
She has a finesse about her that convinces people to do whatever she wants. The fact that he backed out of what Cheryl would want him to do, and the fact that Rick went public with it, put a mark on his back. I believe Cheryl is dangerous, but I believe she's more dangerous with the power that she gets over people, because she's the prophet.
I find it suspicious that he died of unknown causes. Cheryl did ask Rick, supposedly, to assassinate her husband. What else does he know that could damage her and her reputation even more than it is already? I believe Cheryl could potentially be capable of orchestrating someone's passing. And if she can ask for that to happen, what else can she ask for if she feels cornered and has no other way out?
I got a message from one of the producers saying, is there any way that Rick Madrid may have passed away? I was kind of surprised and upset by it because Rick ended up being a good friend. Like, if you can be friends with your hitman, we were friends with the hitman.
We've been told that Rick died of sleep apnea. It's possible, but be kind of unusual. We've been told he had a brain aneurysm. Some have suggested that Cheryl paid him off to disappear. But what is consistent is that everyone we've spoken with who knows Cheryl and heard of Rick's passing thinks his alleged death is suspicious.
Right now, we're traveling into Bellingham from our home. I have an appointment with Rick Madrid's nephew, Randy. There's so many questions surrounding Rick's death. You know, like, everybody that knows Cheryl knows what she's capable of. We're concerned for Rick because, you know, there's questions like, did he die of natural causes? Was he killed? Was he killed by somebody under the influence of Cheryl? And I'm hoping that Randy can answer some of them. Yeah, I'm gonna grab this. Hey, Randy! Okay, so hide the camera. Hide the camera, I'm going back in. Holy.
You okay, bud?
Rick told him that Cheryl wanted him to kill us.
Yeah.
So I just got done speaking with Randy and confirmed everything that Rick had told me on the phone back in 2016. Well, yeah, and it wasn't just Mark. He said, you know, that Cheryl wanted him to kill Mark, myself, and our whole family.
Now, Rick obviously spoke about the attempt on Mark's life on a podcast, but this is new. We did not know that Rick was allegedly tasked with killing Mark's entire family.
He knew that Rick has passed away, but he is not sure how he passed away. He's heard several stories from his family, they've all given him a different story.
So why are we even theorizing about Rick Madrid's death? So if Cheryl is complicit, then this doesn't look good for her, to her followers, and to the community if it gets out. Now, the alleged conspiracy to murder Mark Walker can't be prosecuted because too much time has lapsed. The statute of limitations has passed on conspiracy. However, there is an angle investigators might consider when examining Cheryl Ruthven and her cat cult. It's not the most eye-catching of crimes, but it has brought down some of the nation's most notorious criminals.
People have asked me in the past, like, what Cheryl is about and what motivates Cheryl. And I think the easiest, shortest answer for that is money.
If Cheryl's doing anything illegal, it would be with money. Pilfering money from her followers, not paying taxes on it, and putting it into an offshore account. I would say follow the money.
People who spent a lot of time in the home thought that there was no delineation between personal, ministry, cat rescue. If Cheryl needed money, it was all her pot. Now she has at least 3 accounts offshore in Panama. I have no idea what's in there, but somebody should. Where's the gold? Where's the silver? Where's all the precious metals that she transported from Washington? There's so many question marks, and I still have all those question marks as we sit here today. Like, why isn't anybody looking at Cheryl Ruthven?
It has come to my knowledge that Cheryl no longer lives in Columbia, Tennessee, but she has picked up roots again and moved to Columbia, Kentucky. I think she needed to change where she lived because she was in the spotlight. From what I understand, they've started a new rescue, so it's no longer Eva's Eden, it's Da Vinci's Dream. And now it's not only cats, but now they're inclusive of dogs. My guess is, again, they're hiding behind another animal rescue.
Tax evasion and financial fraud are crimes that are prosecuted at the state and federal levels. If Cheryl's nonprofits and other entities are investigated and evidence of wrongdoing is found, it is possible she could face criminal sanctions, whether it's a fine or probation or even a prison term. In the end, any sanction imposed would pale in comparison to the pain and suffering Cheryl Ruthven has wrought on those families that she has torn apart.
The level of control that this person has. You ask me if she's dangerous, I say she's dangerous. She destroys families. She destroys people.
I haven't spoken to my children since the day they left, which is February 11th, 2013, so 11 and a half years. My children aren't children anymore, they're adults. I told them, even before they left, that what they were going through was difficult, and there'd be 30 before they figured it out. Well, they're 30 now. And I don't think they've figured it out yet. I don't know what to do there.
I am so thankful for that woman that gave me a place to land. But life happens. It wasn't meant to be with her. And I met the most incredible woman who is now my wife. She opened her heart and her family, and I have a stepdaughter now. And now I have a family, and I have this incredible career, and this beautiful home, and I didn't go crazy. I would say, if anybody's listening to this that's still stuck in a very deep, dark place with someone who manipulates you and tells you if you leave, these bad things will happen to you, I promise you it won't. You will only find life and authenticity on the other side of those lies. I still like cats. I liked cats before Cheryl tortured us with them. As you can see on my shirt, I have Black Cat, a representative of my last Eva's Eden cat. Her name is Evie. So yes, I love cats. Cheryl doesn't own cats. She doesn't own their mystery or their, peculiar ways they make us laugh. And I still love them. I love cats.